All right, let me.
David Darling, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
Well, hi, Terrence. Finally, it's great to talk to you in person, and thank you for having me.
I also have to give you huge kudos because you, my man, look incredible. For the audio listeners, David is wearing a three-piece tux and he's got cufflinks, I see. And those are like the nice, there's a specific term for those buttons on the shirt.
They're button covers, Masonic emblem, and I went all out, and I even grabbed the pocket watch for you. So,
Okay, the pocket watch, just as a quick side tangent, the pocket watch is, in my opinion, one of the most like underrated men's accessories possible.
yeah,
Just immediately elevates to this level of class and sophistication that just
well,
a wristwatch doesn't have.
that's true. And later on, ask me again how this particular pocket watch relates to one of my novels, Edge of
Ooh.
Time. So, it's all related.
It's all related. Okay, I'll definitely have to ask about that. First and foremost, would you mind just sharing a brief biographical sketch with the audience?
Sure, no problem. I'm in a few weeks. I'll be rapidly approaching my mid 50s. However,
Congratulations.
I'm out of jail and I'm on the right side of the lawn, so everything's okay in that regard. Um, Former soldier in the Canadian Forces. I was a tanker and transferred into artillery during my later years, going on 2 decades almost, 17 years. And
Thank you for your service.
thank you very much. I enjoyed it so much, but surprisingly, once I was in the army, I learned how to learn, and I
Mhm.
didn't quite get that in high school. So for all my instructors out there that happen to be watching this, thank you. And that motivated me to become an instructor,
Mhm.
and I've taught dozens of courses and hundreds of students from marching to firing a rifle to driving a tank. So uh, uh, thoroughly enjoyed it. I've also been an avid martial artist since I was 14, so
Oh, cool.
40 years.
Which
Uh,
specific martial arts or all of them?
all of them, quite a few. No, I've been focused mostly on the Japanese martial arts. So I started
Mhm.
off with judo back when I was 14, and I did that for, oh, well, it never really stops. Uh, and then I trained, after 10, 14 years, I transferred into jiu-jitsu, aikido. And in my later years, after a few knee surgeries and shoulder surgeries, karate. But
Mhm.
I'm at the bouncing point where it kind of more detrimental than it is
Mm.
to train, especially with the joints, but in the back. But it's all still in my head, so I really enjoyed that. So,
It's really neat that you have the background as an instructor because as a writer, being able to describe something to the audience is like that. There's a lot of other things that have to happen to make a good story, but
oh,
especially when it's going to be something technical or you're going to describe how a firearm is used
mhm.
or something is someone
Oh, sure,
fights, having the ability to actually explain to someone else what those steps look like
correct.
is paramount.
I can't tell you the number of times I've read a novel where somebody takes their Glock 17, cocks the action, places the weapon on safe, and lays it down. And I'm like, details matter. There is no safety on a Glock. There's the manual safety, which is your finger, which you keep alongside the trigger guard. There's no, so it's little things like that that I hope to push the realism. And if I don't know something, I'm gonna either research it or find a subject matter expert, find a SME, and talk to them about it. And I got enough friends in all various fields, from police, fire to
Mhm.
military, still. And I'm not in anymore, but and if you're out for a couple of years, you're starting to fall behind. So a lot of people know what's going on, and I have no problems talking to them. It's great research, especially for writing. You got to know what you're talking about.
Mhm. I do have a slight tangent question as I was writing up because I put together a handful of questions, but always the goal of conversations like this is to have an actual conversation. Darling, do you ever get Peter Pan jokes?
Well, my mother was going to call me Michael. That was one of,
Oh,
and then Peter Pan. the main character, for those of you that don't know, is Michael Darling. So she decided not to and went with naming me after my great grandfather. So David. Yeah. So I understand the reference, but many people don't.
Well, and that's such a it really actually you have to thank your mom because having the alliterative David Darling is such a great author name right off the bat.
It's
You are
exactly.
there with Brad Thor and like being born with the perfect name for writing.
Oh, well, thank you. It first, it's memorable. I'm not. I struggled for a long time whether I should write under a pen name or not. In fact, I have several profiles already good to go, all up and running
You've
for a
got
pen.
cover identities
Yeah, I
ready.
got cover identities ready to go, but I never did it. So they're by the wayside. I was gonna, but I just it's my name. This is who I am, and I make my own identity. So but Dave Darling is sticking, and it's the one that I'm rolling with, and I'm okay with that.
When did you start writing?
It'd be about 6 years ago now. Well, the real answer is grade 12 creative writing class when I was forced to write for assignments, but I enjoyed the English. I uh, really enjoyed it. I didn't understand, pronouns, dangling participles, anything like that. It was all, like I said before, learning wasn't my thing until I joined the military. So, but the real answer is about 6 years ago.
Hmm. And which was your first book?
My first book is Serve in the Shadows Recruitment, military paranormal.
Hmm.
And
Ooh.
wow, the cons, I couldn't write another Brad Thor book or a Brad Taylor. I found that market hard to break into for starters.
Hmm.
Second, I'd be regurgitating a kind of story that's been told hundreds of times. So
Hmm.
I was like, well, what if a soldier on deployment receives word that his brother, who's a CIA agent,
Hmm.
passes away? And so he gets pulled out of theater, and he goes. Then he finds out while his brother's still dead, he can still see and talk to him,
Hmm.
and he has to help his brother finish his assignment and stop a terrorist plot. So and I'm like, okay, sure. I was recovering from shoulder surgery, so I, uh, I had nothing else to do, so I decided to keep going, and it was horrible. It was truly horrible, and it took me 12 months of
Ooh.
rewriting and working with
Mhm.
different editors to finally get the story down. So, but you got to start somewhere, and that's
That's
where I
right.
started.
Well, your latest book talked about starting now where we're at now, the Egyptian Enigma. First and foremost, can I just say this is a very eye-catching cover,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. The highest compliments I can offer a book is when it's a little bit longer than my usual read, but it reads like a breeze. It is so fast-paced, easy to just keep turning the pages. And I had a specific question that I formulated based on this
Oh,
review of the book.
I'd love to hear it.
You end every chapter on like the perfect level of cliffhanger. How do you come up with that? Is that something that you have started out from the beginning with, I know that these are the beats? Do you drop the chapters based on those beats? Or is it you write the story and then go through and go, okay, here's the cliffhanger and chapter, here's cliffhanger and chapter.
There's 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 a whole bunch of different ways to go about it.
Hmm.
If you're in a marathon or sprint running and you're out of breath and you get to the end of the chapter, you got to turn the next page to find out what's going on. But if you keep doing that, you're going to find the reader,
Hmm.
as a reader, as you can tell, I like to read as well. Uh,
You have a glorious book collection behind you.
oh, there's another three shelves, and my Kindle would weigh 1,000 pounds if I had to pick it up. So if I kept doing stuff like that with the chapter endings where it's
Hmm.
the cliffhanger, you got to turn the page. I found that would wear me out. But
Hmm.
do I keep it interesting at a natural pause?
Hmm.
Yeah. Are you curious as to what's going to happen next? For sure. As a writer, that's what we want. We got to hook you, or
Hmm.
else the attention span for everybody is I don't want to say not dwindling, but it's shorter. So
Hmm.
that's why I've been keeping a little bit briefer pair chapters, sorry, and keeping them interesting enough that the reader wants to keep reading. So it's a challenge.
You've accomplished on all cylinders because that's the thing where if it's too high stakes, it fatigues. We did a conversation about Ice Station Zebra with Stephen Hardoff, and it was a great book, but like every like 4 chapters, the entire crew of the I can't remember the name of the submarine, but they're all like at the edge of death. They're going to die. It's the highest stakes situation. You're like, I wouldn't be, this would be more interesting if we hadn't already done this 3 or 4 times within the
Yeah,
span of the last like 150 pages. So you do a great job of it's enough to keep you turning. Like it's just that right level of it's like you have a solid pace rhythm where we have a every chapter ends with something that makes you want to keep turning the page, but we don't have consistently okay, it's life or death on the next page.
for sure. Yeah, thank you. It's also a matter of just destroying 30,000 words to condense everything down into a book like that, to make the rhythm and the pacing, which you mentioned, viable. Like I said, I'm a reader, and I like to read in that kind of manner. So I hope that translated well, and thank you for your kind words.
Mhm. Tell us just a little brief. This is the Egyptian Enigma. People need to go and read the book.
I like to write a story about the like an average person
Hmm.
thrown into circumstances, adapting to it. He might not know much. He might not have. He's not a Green Beret. He's not a Navy SEAL.
Hmm.
And
Which I
it's
loved in this book, by the way. So
thank you.
refreshing because like I understand the reason why to give someone who's like they have this life experience that gives them the tools to meet the situation.
Oh, for sure.
But it works in so many levels in so many places, but it is so refreshing to every now and again read a book where it's like, oh, this is a guy who has no clue what he's doing and is immediately thrust into, holy shit, what's going on?
Yeah, and how we react. So the story is about Ryan Peaty. He's a 22-year-old graphics designer graduate living in his mom's basement designing websites. And
Hmm.
um, you
Very
know,
millennial of millennials. I thought that was a stellar choice.
well, it is. I was that guy for a while, but they didn't have websites back in '92 when I graduated from graphics design. Really, it was not really on the road yet. However, enough about that. Anyway, so Ryan Peaty, he's going to get his driver's license. He lives in a booming metropolis of
Hmm.
Toronto, and there's not much of a need for anybody to drive there with the infrastructure, the buses and subways and all that. So he goes to get his license, but on the way he takes a shortcut through an alley that's not in the good part of town,
Hmm.
and he ends up seeing two gangs collide, and he hides behind a dumpster. And after the shootout, he pokes his head up. A gang member passes away, and he sees a glowing ankh. It's
Hmm.
a For those of you that don't know, it's the Egyptian symbol of immortality, and it looks a lot like that, and glowing on the wall. And he goes to investigate, and the last gang member passes away, and then the glowing symbol disappears. And that's how it starts. And then he sees, as more people die or he's thrust into different circumstances, the glowing ankh reappears and then fades away with each death. And he chases after the knowledge of what that is and meets up with Crystal, an archaeologist working at the Royal Ontario Museum.
Hmm.
And from there, he demonstrates an ability called stone singing, and
Yes.
that's the original idea of how the monolithic stones were once moved from the 80-ton stone hanging above the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid to maybe the Stonehenge. 60-ton stones bounced upon other stones. So how did they move them? Well, there's lots of ideas, but
Hmm.
I went in a different direction. So, and that's the basis for the story. And those two are thrusted into an adventure, and they're eventually forced to search for and locate the Hall of Records, which
Mm-hmm.
is the ancient Egyptian library of knowledge, which there's records of this going back thousands of years. So maybe it existed once, maybe it's still hidden. We don't know. But and that's how the story goes.
I thoroughly enjoyed the ride in this book. It reminded me a bit of the Librarian series in some ways, where it was a TV show, TV movie with like Noah Wiley, and the whole concept is he's like the librarian, and they're trying to protect the whatever artifacts.
Okay.
But my point being, it has that rip roaring, great, just adventure vibe from the start, and as the story progresses, it never takes me out of the story. It just keeps me diving further and further from the real world to, oh no, what's going to happen next? And I have to ask, what does the research look like for putting together the Egyptian Enigma? Because like we
Yeah.
just talked about stuff that's, very hard science stuff of guns, weapons, martial arts. Then we get to stone singing. What did the process for the research of this book? Because you do include a lot of actual Egyptian history and information in this story.
Sure. Well, here's, except for stone singing, the actual method by which you could shape and move monolithic stones, everything in the novel is real.
Mm-hmm.
Locations, um, dates, historical references, absolutely everything. Even where the story starts at Jane and Finch until the Ira shot structure in Africa. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything I've said in there is factual and real. That was months and months of notes, documentaries, you name it. I jumped into it. Even the History Channel of, did aliens build the pyramids? Well, probably not. But so, like, boy, did I ever get into that. So just I, sometimes I would be like a whole week of researching and writing notes for like 2 paragraphs, and you're like, oh man. And then next thing I know, the red edit button comes through there, and it's down to 1 paragraph condensed, and but it's all factual.
Mm-hmm.
So did I learn a lot? Yes. Boy, it was a great deep dive I did. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope that came across in the book.
It really did. And it's just such a perfect example of Hemingway's iceberg theory that there's so much of it that just rides beneath the surface and you feel that weight in the story. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that level of research because I think that especially when you start asking the audience to buy into something like stone singing, the more you ground everything else in the story, the more the acceptance of this just okay, we're moving on in the world.
As I mentioned in the afterword, the stone singing part, somebody did hypothesize that some of these stones were
Mm-hmm.
carved using sonics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just that little, the YouTube video shorts you see sometimes. That was what caught my attention. And I'm going, Sonics, of course, that's exactly how they did it, because it looked like ice cream scoop marks in the stone. And underneath the fallen monolithic monument, it just looked like they used something like a hot knife through butter, just scooping it right out. And so I started researching sonics, and yeah, it's what they can do is really amazing. It's, from tumors, they can use sonics to levitate things now to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent. So, and that was the basis and of the original idea, I guess, if you wanted to call it that.
So when did the story start for you?
I've always been a fan of James Rowland's.
Mm-hmm.
If you couldn't tell by reading, James Rowland, Steve Barry, William Burr, or sorry, William Smith. Uh, all those guys. There's so many. I'm missing some. So if I missed you and you're watching, I'm sorry. However, I always wanted to write like an action adventure that
Mm-hmm.
that's more of an action adventure, 60-40 thriller
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. For me, like Dan Brown,
Mm-hmm.
the Da Vinci Code. So that kind of stuff I find is just so fascinating. So when I saw that little YouTube video short clip of some guy going, well, it looks like it was carved out with an ice cream scoop. And then that's what set it off for me. And that was a year ago last September, a couple months of research. I started writing in December, January. So yeah, so I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
I saw it in a interview you did with the dossier, Jeff Circle, who you have rivaled in fantastic
Well,
dress wear.
sorry, Jeff, I had to step it up a bit.
I saw that the book was originally called The Sign of Anubis or Signs of Anubis. I'm just
Correct.
curious what prompted the name change. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
From the amount of people I talked to, they weren't exactly sure who Anubis was.
Yeah.
And then I would have to explain, oh, that's the jackal-headed god of uh, the Egyptian guide to the afterlife. And
Mhm.
oh yeah, yeah, I know that. And then after having to explain that several dozen times to
Mm.
various different people, I just like I don't I don't think it's gonna fly. Too many people go, oh, the signs of Anubis. Well, it's not gonna really stick, I don't think. So that's why I changed it to the Egyptian Enigma. Um, a great conundrum of the great Egyptian question, and
Mhm.
I hope that made I like that. I think it went
Mhm.
rather well and paired rather well with the story at the end.
I think that it's a brilliant title. Again, like we joke about alliteration, but the reality is it does work. And I think that it immediately tells you everything you know about the book. I'm familiar enough with the general cultural myth, etc., that I knew what you were talking about. But yeah, now that you mention it, I can 100% see where average person off the street goes, "Who?" And
Yeah,
that I think is one of the cool things about what you're doing with self-publishing is that you can take that feedback and make adjustments. And that's the cool part about doing it the way you're doing it.
yeah. For those of you that don't know, yeah, I'm independently publishing. I've heard back from some of the top literary agents in North America and England, London, and love my work, love my stories, love the writing. It's just not a good fit. And after hearing that a couple dozen times, I'm like, well, I got to move on. Like I
Hmm.
got all this backlog of novels piling up, and self-publish, move on. So, and that's what I've been doing. So I am my own marketing expert. I'm advertising. I'm do the first round edits. I work with a designer for the cover.
Hmm.
Promotions, and that's one of the things I could get immediately was the feedback. Anubis, who's that? It sort of sounds familiar. Maybe I know what it is, but it's a fruit, right? No, it's not a
Hmm.
fruit. It's an Egyptian god. So yeah, so at that point, I'm like, I got to pivot.
Hmm. Well, and I do think that it's a stronger title because again, it tells you exactly the setting, that there's a question hovering over it, and it does have really that kind of pulp adventure title vibe where it's like, oh, there's the question about Egypt. It just, which
Yep.
honestly though, to that extent, like Edge of Time is also like a fantastic title.
Thank you, thank you. I've I like most of this stuff back here, and the other shelves I read is science fiction fantasy. That's where I started, and I've always been writing about novels that I want to read.
Hmm.
That's how I've been approaching it. And
Hmm.
if somebody else feels the same way, and maybe they'll pick it up. That's all you can hope, really. So I decided to write a time travel novel that is uh, pretty much based on science. Again, all the
Hmm.
research was done from the parts of a particle accelerator to um, farmland in rural Boston and back in the late 1700s, and what were the crops, what were they wearing, etc. How many chickens per rooster? You know, if the guy has 8 chickens and he has 2 roosters, no, that doesn't work. He has to have 1 rooster per 8 chickens. So like there's 1,000 little details that I throw in there that I don't know. Most people know, but it is what it is. And so I wrote a time travel novel on that, and book 2 just came out. You
Congratulations.
can read it, Edge of Eternity. and I was leaving it at 2. However, I accidentally started book 3.
Hmm. As
So
one does.
yeah, I just finished chapter 4 this morning. So it's
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, book 3 is called Edge of Eternity, Time or Infinity. Sorry, there we go.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah. So Edge of Infinity and Time, Eternity, Infinity, they all kind of
Mhm.
went together. So kind of felt it's falling together rather nicely. So
Well, and it's really cool to have that come together organically
mhm.
because I don't know about you, but when I read, especially a trilogy, often a trilogy these days, where it feels like that third book is just either the second or the third book feels perfunctory. Like, okay, the editor asked for 3 books, they had 2 book ideas. And then you're sitting there slogging through either the final chapter of the story as extended one book
Right.
or that middle book, it's like just a placeholder to get to the actual plot.
Yeah, I've contract obligations. Well, I'm not under any, to be honest. So that part's really good. Not that I'm gonna turn down a publishing
Mhm.
contract. However, as a self or independent publishing writer, I'm doing okay. I believe
Mhm.
I'm making more than quite a few traditionally published authors from what I
Yeah.
got and talking with my friends. So I'm gonna keep on track here. And why would I give away more of the pie when I can keep doing what I'm doing? So
Well, and the cool thing is you know how every stage of the production works for your book. And you have the ability to, okay, I can market using these methods, these channels. And like I remember hearing, I can't remember what, it was either a television show, audiobook. Basically, the author was like, you guys aren't, it actually may have been like one of the Hemingway
okay,
biographies that I was reading. And Hemingway was complaining about the publishing house not putting enough advertising behind one of his books.
correct, yeah.
And
Um,
that's something as an independent,
oh yeah.
you make that decision. You're not beholden to what does the publishing house want to do with it. And you're stuck with either I have to market the book and still not see as much return. You actually get to reap the benefit of your labors.
Oh, for sure. There's publishing houses out there. They only really focus on the top 5%. And you're 6%. You're doing your own marketing and promoting your novel. I'm not Brad Thor, I'm not Brad Taylor, David Baldacci, who's really he's got his own little deal with his publishing house. He goes, I don't need you anymore. How about we split the profits? And they went, well, it's either that or you leave, right? So,
Mhm.
I'm not there. But so I would be doing my own marketing and advertising then too, but I'd be receiving less of the cut. So
Mhm.
after the printing costs, the publishing costs, your agent costs, I'd be making $3, $4 a book. Whereas now it's a lot better for me. So I can see direct correlation to me advertising all my advertisements through just for example, say Facebook. Is this ad
Mhm.
working for this book? In the United States, between women 35 to 70 or 35 plus. Well, no, it's not. So I could change my ad, I can change the description, I could change that, and then I wait another week and I go, oh, now I can see what I just did, a direct correlation to how things are getting better with that ad. Great. But this ad that I'm running in Australia right now is just plummeting.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's change that up. So I can, over the years, I've been doing trial and error and making things work, and it is paying off. But you have to advertise. You just can't put your book up for sale, sit back and go, okay, where's the sales? You got to let
Waiting
people.
for the movie deal.
Yeah, no, nothing like that yet. So
So I'm curious, do you notice any significant deviations between the different markets? So like just for simplification, like is there much difference in the way that the ads are received in Canada versus the US or different?
for
Some
sure.
an ad does better in the US for whatever reason versus Canada.
The advertisement for the ebook is huge in the States. 94% of my sales in the States are ebooks.
Mhm.
Uh, Canada, exact opposite, hardcover books, and it's mostly men.
Wow.
I'm getting more men 25 and up in Canada with my hardcover sales. So I shifted my ad demographic towards
Hmm.
that the male side of things in Canada for my Canadian ads for the hardcover book. And for anybody that's wondering, or does their own Facebook ads or wants to learn about Facebook ads, there's so many videos on there. I've burned through a couple $1,000 trying to figure it out myself, as well as listen to someone else. And in the end, you got to do what's right for you. So when I shifted that over to say for the Canadian ads, you got to put the Canadian link to Amazon, Canadian link to Barnes and Noble. You got to put the Canadian link to Chapters Indigo. In the States, uh, majority of my sales, well into the late 90s, are through Amazon. There's smaller links I could put out there. However, I've dropped them all because it's just
Hmm.
not worth it. I have to focus all my efforts with the big guy and make Jeff Bezos even richer. So I have to go where the money is because
Hmm.
I'm looking out for myself, to be honest.
Hmm. Praise be to capitalism.
Well, yes.
So you do a great job of, like, even you were telling us about your first book, it has so many different genre elements. You have a genre range that I think often is lacking in the marketplace for somewhat understandable reasons. Like someone picks up a thriller, you want it to be as simple as, okay, they know it's a thriller. But what makes a book unique and interesting and stand out is when it has that extra little secret sauce, that extra flavor to it.
For sure.
When you are shifting between genres or you're adjusting the formulation, is that something you do consciously, or is it more as the story naturally evolves, these different ingredients, you start like tasting it and going, okay, this needs a little extra sci-fi?
uh, Excellent. Yes. Good question. So for there's two semi-recognizable styles of writing. I'm sure everybody's heard of this before. The people that like to plan out each chapter all the way through their whole entire novel, including the ending, spoilers, you name it, they get their whole
Mhm.
novel done. And like Kyle Mills will do a 56,000 word outline of his novel. So there's no surprises. It's all done. Um, Whereas I'm the guy that sits down and go, okay, what am I going to write now? I, I start hearing the story in my head and I start, oh, well, let's start with, if I was writing well, I also have a police thriller series on the go as well. Just straight up, no aliens, no magic powers, no swords, magic, nothing. Just a police detective. So I just started writing about a crime, and then I go, well, I need somebody to work this crime. Oh, it's obviously he's going to be a police officer, and I worked my way through there, and I had a name, and I went with Noah Hunter. So now I got the Noah Hunter police thriller series on the go, and book four is in progress. It's sort of on hold right now. So while I get these other projects done. But yeah, so I free flow and I do it as I'm going. And if this guy needs to move a 40-ton megalithic stone, well, man, there's only so many options. Let's make this guy a stone singer, like in the last novel. So
It's really cool. It's enjoyable to see how you're not limiting yourself into one box. I think when I first started writing, one of my major things was I wanted to have the freedom to jump between genres because, and that's one of the benefits of being independently published is you don't have the editor and publishing house saying, David, Bobby, we've got you in the sci-fi category. We don't want you moving into the thriller category.
yeah, exactly. Well, so I've got police thriller novels. I got a psychological thriller novel out there. I got a paranormal military spy novel, science fiction, action adventure with the Egyptian Enigma. And so you're thinking, oh wow, okay, where's he going to narrow that down to? I'm not. I'm branching out. Coming out this February is The Guards of Twilight. It's a young adult fantasy novel.
Ooh,
Oh, it's already written. It's done. I'm halfway through book 2 in the series as well.
congratulations.
Thank you. So I, I'm writing what I want to hear. I'm writing what I enjoy.
Hmm.
So, and when I started out when I was 14 or 12 reading some of these books, some of them are still here, David Eddings, Stephen R. Donaldson, stuff like that. I wanted some magic, and sometimes just going against the dragons, drawing a sword kind of thing is yeah, it's pretty cool. So I wanted to write that as well. So
That's awesome. How many books, like what's the maximum that you've been writing works in progress at one time? Is this like Stephen King's rotating, like the story where he had four of the typewriters like on the Lazy Susan, he just rotate between them every so many minutes?
yeah, yeah,
Do you have laptops, just MacBooks are set up and you just rotate between?
I have one laptop. Yeah. Theoretically, I'm writing 5 right now at the same time.
Wow,
But
that's
then,
impressive.
like, I'm writing a thriller novel based upon, funny enough, one of Stephen King's novels,
Cool.
Firestarter.
Oh
So what?
yeah.
So you know how Firestarter was because of a government project,
Hmm.
and then he went on the run, hiding from, I guess he called it the company. And I go, man, I reread it recently, and what if there was another government organization called the agency, and instead of working on pyrotechnic or some other mental abilities, they were working on telepathy, and the
Hmm.
government has been working on stuff like that, but now the science is there to show where that would be in our brain and what chemicals are needed to induce. So I just been this summer I researched a whole bunch of stuff well beyond my pay grade about medicine and hormones, and so I started writing a not a similar, but a likewise type story. Instead of Firestarter, Pyrotechnics, it's about a telepathic boy on the run with his mom from the agency. So stuff like that. So I got that on the go. I got a Noah Hunter book 4. I got a pure straight fantasy novel on the go called The Sorcerer's Circle. Uh,
Ooh, nice.
Edge of Infinities coming out. So I got all this on the go. So, but you sit down to write and it's storming and raining out. I don't feel like writing this type of novel or this next chapter. Hey, let's go work on this, or let's work on what you're in the mood for. It's
Hmm.
5 a.m. I can't sleep. I've already had 2 cups of coffee. Yeah, let's write a good action scene right now because I'm all pumped, man. Let's go. So I'm not working on a fantasy novel. I want to work on a nice pure thriller novel or something like that. So it's where the mood strikes. But and then all of a sudden by next year at this time, I'm gonna have about 5 more books done.
That
So
is incredible.
yeah, so it's slow pieces. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at
One
a
at a
time.
time. I
So that's all.
loved, so you actually used that
I
quote
did use
in the
that.
Egyptian
Yes.
Enigma, and I'm like, because it's one of my favorite phrases, because
Me too. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I don't feel overwhelmed until I actually start like looking at the broad scope, and then it's hard to stop the camera pulling out, and I'm like going on first date with girl, like, oh no, what if we get married? What if we have children? What's she going to look like when she's 85? Will I die before her? And I'm like, okay, we need to like slow down, pause, just tonight, just
Yep.
dinner. You have to start like just little piece at a time. And I think that writing, it's easy to kind of start falling into that vein where if you start looking at too much of the meta, it becomes overwhelming because it is having to create this whole complete. I remember someone, I think it was Matt Bird, who wrote The Secrets of Character and Secrets of Story. Phenomenal guy. We've had him on the podcast. He made a comment about how essentially every book is a lie that you're having to sell the audience on. And
Yep.
so his whole premise is you have to believe, care, and invest in the characters. Because if that
Yeah.
happens, then people will believe the rest of the stuff because you believe enough in the characters. And I think that to your credit, that is something that really works well with Petey is he is someone you're like, oh yeah, I meet that person or I know that person. Like this is
Yep.
all very understandable real world things that then he gets dragged on this adventure and you're just bought right in.
Thank you. Yeah, that's how I have to look at it. Just small piece, and then when you put them all together, then you got something larger, and that's whether it's a first date or writing the first chapter. So that's how I actually look at it. Like right now, I'm also getting into audiobooks. So the
Ooh.
Egyptian Enigma. So I'm working with an audio narrator now, Sean. Hi, Sean.
Hi,
And
Sean.
we're going through it. I don't know anything about audiobooks except for since The Edge of Time came out and Edge of Eternity, I've been bombarded literally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't read much, but boy, am I in the car a lot. I do a lot of
Yeah.
driving or commuting. And I go, when's the audiobook coming out? And I'm like, ugh.
Well,
So right now, I know nothing about it, but by December, it'll be up, out, and done. So it's a whole new world for me to dive into and research.
well, that's awesome. And it's such a great idea because like I'm one of those people, I love audiobooks. I just ordered James R. Ben, we had him on the show recently.
Okay.
He wrote The Phantom Patrol. I ordered a physical copy of the book because I wanted the signed copy on my shelf, but I
Yeah.
also just really enjoy the audiobook version, so I pre-ordered the audiobook.
Oh,
There
excellent.
are people like me that sit there and go, I need the paperback, the hardcover, the audiobook, because the audiobook's one I listen to, and then the paperback's one with the sweet cover, and then the hardcover's the one that I sit there and go, ah, yes, this is what will pass down through future generations. 5 generations from now, kids will go, why did great grandpa Terrence have so many books and why am I expected to have them now?
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me about it. So I understand. So, like,
You
I got
touch,
a. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Like, I got books I'm not gonna ever get rid of. Like, I got an original Imagica signed by Clive Barker hardcover. It's in plastic. It's sealed.
Oh,
I got Dave Duncan, one of my favorite fantasy authors. I just happened to run into him when I was in Toronto one day, and I happened to have one of his books in my pocket. Random, 100% random. He signed it. So, and every Brad Thor, Kyle Mills, that book that I've got up there that are signed, Simon Gervais, he's Chris Howdy, all these guys are amazing. And I talked to them, and I got signed books. I'm
that's
never getting rid of them. They're going to be there for a long time. So my great grandchildren are gonna. Why is he keeping this again? I don't know. Goodwill. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Yeah.
so. You touched on it briefly, but what does your writing routine look like? Do you have a strict writing routine for how you go about?
Yes. It all started with the desire to write. You got to have the dream or the will to write. And if you don't have that, I can't. You can't get that. You got to have it in
Mhm.
you to do it. And then the next thing I always have heard was I don't have time to write. I work full time. I'm a parent. Whatever your things you do, your hobbies and stuff they take. And so that would leave me on the weekends. So I really wanted to write. So instead of getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I get up at 5 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning. That'll give me another hour, an hour and a half to write before everybody gets up, before I go to work. Uh, but I keep my laptop with me at all times. So,
Mhm.
like I said, all these small pieces add up. And after dinner, I'll sit down instead of watching TV, or maybe the TV's on, but I'm not listening. I'm typing, I'm writing. And I just came back from holidays and I brought my laptop with me. So there's always time, there's always down moments. Sometimes it's only 10, 20 minutes, but it's 10, 20 minutes that I didn't have before.
Mhm.
So wherever I can, and a lot of people don't write on weekends to recharge, but I'm not quite there. So I write on weekends and any most available moments.
That's awesome. It is just that consistency.
Hmm.
And I can honestly say I've never been happier than those moments where I have like 10 extra minutes and I happen to have
Perfect.
my laptop there and I'm like, you know what? The idea popped and I'm like, oh, this is how I solve this problem and just sit down and grind out a few
Love it.
sentences.
That's awesome. I'm usually thinking about the problems or what's coming up next in that brief 4 or 5 minutes as I'm falling asleep, and then I can wake up the next morning going, "That was the idea. That's it. That's how I'm doing this." Or how does the main character get out of this situation? Or and I go, "Well, this the storyline needs a refresher. Let's introduce a new guy, or this is how the problem's going to be solved. So yeah, that's perfect. 5-10 minutes.
I actually heard someone, I can't remember what, it was like one of those productivity guru guys. He's like, never go to bed without like having a problem that you just kind of drop on the back burner
Mhm.
because it's so the way our brains work is incredible, where it will just overnight, 9 times out of 10, just kind of
Oh,
quietly work on that as you're sleeping and then spit out something.
I've never heard of that, but that's how I work. So
Mhm.
I've never heard of that, but I'll believe it. Yeah, cool.
David, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for
One
having me.
last question I need to ask because you do
All right.
leave the Egyptian Enigma on kind of a question mark. Will we potentially see more books in this series?
Yes, at least one more.
Awesome.
I've
I'll
already.
take it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Terrence. It's a pleasure to finally talk to you in person, if this is in person, and I look forward to having further conversations with you.
Absolutely. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Uh, I'm I'm all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, David Darling author. But you can go to daviddarlingbooks.com and you can check out my books page, what's coming up, what's new. Drop me a message, sign up for my newsletter, and yeah, I'll keep you informed.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.